I really love the song, No Longer Slaves, and the reason I just think it's so powerful for our church to be able to sing and declare that we are no longer slaves to fear, because I feel like a lot of times as a church and as people that we can respond and operate out of fear in life, whether the circumstances that have happened in our lives and or whatever the case may be, that we can tend to be slaves to that fear.
You know, something I'm reminded of in the song is at the end of the song when it talks about God splitting the seas and us walking through. And it reminds me of a story in the Bible, in the book of Exodus, where the Israelites come up to the Red Sea and the Egyptians are following behind them, and God miraculously splits the sea open, and the Israelites flee through and they escape the Egyptians. And I think about times in my life where I've faced circumstances or different things that are fearful, and knowing that God is my provision and He's there for me and cares for me is awesome. Yeah.
Another huge statement in this song and a declaration that I feel just is really powerful is that we are able to sing out and declare that I am a child of God. And I know you have a kid on the way, and so just tell us about that and how that relates with your understanding of fatherhood.
Yeah, one powerful reminder that I've been given a lot lately through this song is the fact that before we were born, we were loved and chosen by God. And before we even took a breath, He breathed His life in us, and He knew our defects. He knew the problems we were gonna have or the choices we were gonna make, but that didn't stop Him from calling our name and setting us apart. And in my life, I've been able to understand this at a whole new level because I'm gonna be a father soon. And my love for my son has been growing so much without even knowing who he is yet. Knowing that with Jesus at the center of his life, his heavenly Father's company is the best place to be. And his heavenly Father's voice is the one that he should be most familiar with. Because if our Father's voice is the voice that we're most familiar with, we'll know that God says that we're His masterpiece, that we're chosen, or that we're set apart, or that we're children of a God that fights for us.
I'm really looking forward to the years to come as we continue to grow together as a church, and no matter what the circumstances may be, the good and the bad, that we would embrace that identity that we've found, that we are truly a child of God.
So in just a few short weeks, my wife and I will get to meet our baby girl for the very first time. And we're pretty excited. And for the last few weeks and months, I've just been dreaming about who she's going to be, what she's going to do, you know, the next 100 years of her life. What is that going to look like? Because we live in a time in a world now where she can do whatever she wants. She can be whoever she wants to be. You know, if she wants to go and be a teacher or a doctor or a lawyer or an athlete, an artist, if she wants to be hated, she can go into politics. She can do anything she wants. She can pick anything. She can choose who she wants to be. But as I've been thinking about that, this truth has really settled into my heart, and that's this. Her identity is already chosen. She has an identity right now before she's even born. She's my daughter. That's her identity. And nothing that will happen or nothing she will do will take that away. And truthfully, my identity now is a father. I am her father. And regardless of what happens, we have an identity. Yeah, and that's important. That's comforting because we want to know our identity. We want to know who we are. And you know, truthfully, I think that's why God gave us and told us what our identity is from the very beginning. Here, He says this, "And I will be your father, and you will be my sons and daughters, says the Lord Almighty." Right away, He wants us to know, you are my sons and daughters. That is your identity. And my identity in your life is I will be your father. Regardless of what happens, we have this identity. And that's important to us because truthfully, there's this urgency now where we need to figure out just who we are. And we want to answer that question. We want to figure out what we're supposed to do in life. If you were to ask, psychologists, they would tell you that you need to know your identity so you can get fulfillment in life. Many of us have spent time wandering and just kind of grasping at different things, trying to figure out who we are so we know what role we're supposed to play, what we're supposed to be passionate about, who we are supposed to be. It's important to us. But I don't think God just gave us our identity so we feel good. I think it mattered to him also. See, I believe God knew the importance of our identity. And now as we're going through this, I wanted us to be able to understand what I mean by identity. And so I did some research, and I found more of an academic definition of this as we're just kind of walking through what I mean to have an identity. And so I chose this definition right here. Identity is this. It is the result of experiences creating values that influence our choices. Easy enough, right? Maybe I should say it one more time. Result of experiences creating values that influence our choices. It is a bit of a mouthful, and so I figured the easiest thing to do to explain this is actually we're gonna split this in half. So the first part is the result of experiences creating values. My mom is the best cook ever. That's a value I have. That's a belief I have. So what happened a long time ago, my mom fed me. And as I was experiencing this moment of being fed, my brain flooded my mind with different chemicals causing me to become happy. My brain actually released certain chemicals like oxytocin and dopamine and etc., which caused me to feel joy and happiness and love. And then sometime later after that, she fed me again. Once again, I'm going through this experience, and my brain releases these chemicals, causing me to become happy. This happens over and over and over again to where pretty soon, anytime I think of my mom and her cooking, my brain releases those same chemicals, and I feel those same emotions. I think of her cooking now, and I become extremely happy, to where I believe that she is an incredible cook. However, there is a second part of this. There is the values that influence our choices. I would assume that 100% of you disagree with me when I say that my mom is the best cook ever. In fact, I would bet that most of you are actually picturing in your own mind who you believe the best cook ever is, because you have had these same sort of experiences to where your brain released the same sort of chemicals, causing you to form a belief and attitude, a mindset, to where now you have a value that you hold. I would even venture to guess some of you are sitting in here thinking, oh, I'm the best cook ever. See, we all have had experiences that create values that now influence our choices. They influence how we think, how we feel, how we react. These values influence and shape all information we process. This small example of my mom being a cook is just a tiny portion of experiences and values that make up our identity. So let me take it one step further. Let's look at this verse together. And I tell you, ask and it will be given to you. Seek and you will find. Knock and it will be open to you. Now we are all reading the exact same verse at the same time in the same translation. But I'm guessing our reactions to this verse are all different. We're all experiencing different thoughts and opinions right now as we're reading this. See, our identity has kicked in and is now filtering what we view about this. So as we said earlier, our identity is that we are children of God. We are sons and daughters. So if we're reading this from that identity, that I am a child of God, then we're thinking, it's so great that's true. I love the fact that I can go to my God and ask, and he'll answer. Seek and I'll find. Knock and the door will be opened. That is how you should react if your identity is that of a child of God. However, I'm guessing most of us are maybe a little more skeptical. I'm guessing some of us are doubting this. We're probably thinking, well, I don't even know why God would would open the door for me. I've asked him things over and over, and I've never really gotten an answer. I'm sure that's true for some people, but really it's not true for me. I just don't know if I've done enough for this to be true, or maybe I've done too much, and now I just know this is not true. See, some of us struggle to embrace that identity that God has given us because most of us do not understand the identity God gave us. We believe in God. We read his word. We try and follow him. But when it comes down to it, our identity is something different. We don't quite understand what it means to be a child of God. Therefore, we decide to go off on our journey and search for and define our own identity that we can embrace and hold on to. Most of us tend to actually attach ourselves to similar identities. Different studies have been done to actually help us see that birth order is one of the most powerful factors in determining our identity. We let birth order incredibly influence who we are, what our identity is. And I'm guessing as we go through this, a lot of you could probably agree with this. You could identify with this. So let's take a look at our birth order. So for some of us in here, you are the firstborn. The firstborn tends to be the competitive one, the logical, reasonable, the clear-headed person in the family. They also tend to be a bit of a people pleaser. Firstborns are known to conform and compromise in order to make other people happy, because people pleasers believe that if other people are happy, then they themselves are loved. I've spent my entire life watching my oldest sister, who is the firstborn, constantly sacrifice for other people. Just thinking, okay, if they're happy, then everything's going to be good. Her desire is to make other people happy. Some of us have accepted and attached to this identity of being a people pleaser. Some of us are more like the middle children. The middle child is typically the most loyal. They tend to be the negotiator of the family. They're the one who tries to kind of, hear everyone's sides. They're also the highest achievers, typically in the family. But they can also become an overachiever. I can truthfully attest to this. I spent a lot of my life believing that I had to perform at a certain level in order to be good enough. I, like many middle children, have equated success with love and failure with rejection. So now we have to perform, we have to achieve, we have to be seen as hardworking and successful, or else. A lot of middle children, and I'm guessing most of you can identify with this, become overachievers. And let's not leave out the last child. The last child is known to be the fun-loving one, the life of the party, the most social. But with all of those things, they tend to also be a bit of an attention seeker. I'm guessing if you have younger siblings or the baby of the family, you know that is the one that demands the most attention. The problem is many, last-borns or the babies of the family associate attention with love. So good or bad, they seek out that attention because that means that they are being loved. Now, not everybody is going to fall under these. But different studies have concluded that about 78% of us fall in line with one of these. So 8 out of 10 is pretty successful. I would say that most of us are in agreement with one of these. Now, what's interesting is all three of these identities have one thing in common, and that's fear. Fear is what's driving the identity. What I mean is this, is that there's a fear of rejection, fear of not being good enough, fear of losing love. Many of us have adapted an identity that is shaped by fear. We have given this fear permission to shape who we are and therefore to shape what we think. What's interesting I found was they have recently discovered that you're not born with fear. Your brain, physically, scientifically, is not born with fear. There is no mental pathway that leads to us becoming afraid. However, when we are born, there are mental pathways that already lead to love. Love is already established in us. Fear is not. Fear is a learned trait. And what we do is we tend to experience something that has caused some pain, some sort of rejection or fear in our life that our brain has held on to. So now anytime we remember something certain, it's fear that takes control. What ends up happening is, as fear continues to shape us, and as we continue to give it permission to mold our identity, it tends to become more powerful. In fact, I think a lot of us struggle with this right here. Our fears can overpower the truth. Now, I'm guessing some of you are in here thinking, you know what, that's not me. No, I'm not afraid. I don't fear rejection, or I don't need to be seen as good enough, or I don't need any of that stuff. I'm not afraid. Fear's not a part of my life. Well, I want us to read that Luke verse one more time. And I tell you, ask and it will be given to you. Seek and you will find. Knock and it will be opened to you. I wonder how many of us are in here thinking, boy, I can't ask God anything. I've tried, he doesn't listen, and now I wish that were true. I don't think it is. Or seek and you will find. I've been seeking my whole life and I have yet to find anything, so why should I start that now? No, I need to figure this out on my own. I can do it on my own. Some of us are thinking, I've never had a door opened in my life. I've never knocked and had a door open. I've had to push down every door. I've had to fight for everything I've had. So why should I believe that if I knock, it will be open to you? Or maybe even some of you are thinking, I don't know if I want the door to be opened. I'm worried about what God will find if I actually open that door. We have let fear mold the way we think, and now it has shaped many of our identities. And if you're still reading this and you're not completely convinced, I think a lot of us are a little more driven by fear than what we think. I think it overpowers the truth a little bit more than what we think. So I'll give you a great example. My wife is, she's not a big fan of swimming pools. It has nothing to do with swimming. It has everything to do with those big lights in the bottom of all the pools. So when she was 6 years old, she was swimming at a Holiday Inn with her cousins who were a little bit older than her. And as she was swimming and gaining up the courage to go farther into the deep end, they thought it'd be fun to play a prank on her. So they told her that those lights at the bottom of the pools are actually shark hunters. And those shark hunters thought that her feet in the water were fins of sharks. So the closer she got to them, they were going to come after her. So they then spent the rest of the time in the pool diving under and grabbing at her feet. Now that is 100% something a 6-year-old would believe and a 10-year-old cousin would do. And you'd think, okay, that was a long time ago. That's kind of ridiculous now to believe. But 21 years later, my wife is not a fan of swimming pools. Because every time she thinks of them, she thinks of the pool lights, and her brain is flooded by the memory that scared her as a child. And now, even though she knows, it's pretty obvious those pool lights are not shark hunters. There's no reason a Holiday Inn would have need for one. She gets a little afraid. And I think a lot of us experience that. That's why there's phrases like you have to get back on the horse, because there's been enough people who have fallen off a horse or messed up or failed in something to where now they're too afraid to do it. People with near-death experiences or these times where they've almost drowned never get back in the water because they are now so afraid. They may know the truth, but fear is overpowering the truth. When we give fear permission, It begins to shape how we think, and it influences how we process things. So now we're reading that verse thinking, boy, I just don't know if God would ever answer the door for me. I don't think I've done anything to earn it, or I know I've messed up, or I don't know if I'm good enough for that. You know, what's crazy to think about now is modern advances in neuroscience has actually discovered that as we dwell on those negative and fearful thoughts, it will actually change the physical shape of our brain. They've discovered that if we dwell on negative thoughts, it will physically harm your brain. You may not have known that, but your mind can actually harm your brain if you dwell on negative and fearful thoughts. Maybe, truthfully, an easier way to say it is this: keep a sharp eye out for weeds of bitter discontent. A thistle or two gone to seed can ruin a whole garden in no time. Some of us believe in God. We read the Bible, we worship Him, we try and live our life to Him, but we have let a few weeds, a few fearful experiences shape our mind, shape our identity. And now we view God completely different than how we should. So instead of reading that Luke verse thinking, boy, I'm so glad that's true, I'm so glad you're willing to answer me, we think, I just don't know. We have let fear take over. We've become entrapped by fear when we give it permission to grow in our mind. The wonderful thing is, that's not how God designed us. He did not create us to be trapped by fear, to be enslaved of it. Actually, we do not have to become slaves to fear. And I know some of us are thinking, I don't know, fear plays a big part in my life, or I don't know how I would get out of this, but we were not born, like I said before, we were not born with fear. We were born with love, but not with fear. Again, either you listen to science or the Bible, they both say the same thing. Listen to what it says here in Romans. For you have not received a spirit of slavery, leading to fear again, but you have received a spirit of adoption as sons, by which you cry out, Abba, Father. You were given a spirit of love, of being a child of God. So when you hear that, you should think, I am a child of God. But I don't just want you to hear that and think, okay, well, that's cool. I want you to really fully understand what that identity is. So I want to hone in on this word right here, adoption. I think it's incredibly powerful how God used adoption to shape our identity and to give us this gift. So many of us today think of adoption as this, where parents who are able to take on another child do it. You know, there's a child, an infant out there whose their parents are not able to take care of them, so somebody else comes in to love them. So you look at being adopted as God saying, hey, I can take care of you, I love you, and so you think, okay, God's going to bring me in and take care of me, and that's great, but that's not all of it. It goes deeper. Back when adoption was first around in biblical time, you know, it was used to actually wipe out somebody's debt. If you owed a lot of money, if you were indebted to somebody, sometimes they would adopt you and that would wipe your debt out. So again, you're thinking, okay, adoption's pretty cool, because what it's saying is God is actually going to wipe out all my debt. That's really powerful, God. I appreciate that, but it goes even deeper than that. You know, Paul was a Roman writing to the Romans, and the Romans had a specific use for adoption. See, that was something Romans used to gain power. Adoption was something used by the elite in Roman times. So if you had a family that had multiple sons, and you were a powerful Roman family, you would actually pick the son that has the most chance of being successful, and you would let a different Roman family adopt him to make sure that he succeeded in life. And many families who did not have a son, but had a ton of money, had a ton of power, would adopt somebody they deemed worthy to take on all of their possessions. You needed to be good enough. You needed to be worthy of being adopted in Roman time. There's a name you probably have never heard. There's a boy by the name of Gaius Octavius Thurinus. Unless you're a history buff, I'm guessing you have no idea who that is. But he was born in a powerful Roman family, and he was excelling in school and the military training he was getting. And his uncle took notice of that. And this whole time, his uncle had been accumulating and acquiring all of this fortune and power, and he didn't have a son, and he realized, I need to pass this on to somebody. So Gaius' uncle decided to adopt him to make sure that he could pass on his fortune, his kingdom, we'll say. So when that happened, Gaius changed his name. As it was a custom back in that time when you were adopted, he changed his first name to Augustus. And then he took his uncle's last name, because again, that was custom. His uncle's name happened to be Julius Caesar. Now, we probably all have heard of this man, Augustus Caesar. He was the first Roman emperor, one of the biggest names in history. Augustus was a boy by the name of Gaius Octavius who had proved he was worthy. Therefore, his uncle adopted him. When God adopts us, it doesn't just mean he wants to take care of us and wipe out his debt. No, it means something a lot more powerful than that. It actually means this: your adoption means you are worthy to possess his blessings. So when you think of God, when you read his word, when you react to any information, you should have an identity that says, I am worthy to possess his blessings. You know what's interesting? Slaves can't possess something. They can't inherit anything. Sons and daughters can. They possess everything. God wanted us to own all of his blessings, and that is why he adopted us. Some of us may be in here thinking, that sounds great. I would love that, but honestly, that's not the way I think. That's not the way I am built, or that's not the way my mind works. Well, thankfully, we can actually change our mind, our brain. You know, top neuroscientists have recently got together and discovered that if you focus on the right thoughts, you can change the physical pattern of your brain. They have actually developed these exercises to help you take control of all of your thoughts, because a lot of us have tons of thoughts we don't even realize we're thinking throughout the day. So they have created these exercises to make sure we control all of them and we focus them on something positive. Again, an easier way to say it may be this: we take hold of every thought and make it obey Christ. If you want to embrace the identity God gave you, you need to take hold of every thought and make it obey Christ. Not some thoughts, not most of your thoughts, all of your thoughts. Every time you have a thought, you process information, it should go through this identity and filter of, I am worthy of owning all of God's blessings, because that's what he is telling us. That's the truth. And by doing that, we actually have the ability to own and embrace this identity that God gave us and change our way of thinking. And as we continue to do that, you'll notice that fear plays less and less of a part. Recently, I was reading this book by a neuroscientist named Carolyn Leaf. And she was talking about how there is a chemical that your brain releases called oxytocin. If you may know what that is, it's the love hormone. It's the one that makes you feel really happy. That chemical can actually break down pathways and connections in your brain that leads to fear. The way she put it is, as you continue to think about love, you can actually unlearn fear. Love can defeat fear. Great scientific breakthroughs. Another way again to say it could be this: there is no fear in love. Perfect love puts fear out of our hearts. You know, I gotta say, I'm loving the fact that modern science is finally catching up to the Bible. We have the ability to not just own this identity, to understand what it really means to be a child of God and to be worthy of His possessions, but to change our thought pattern. We can change how we view and react and process so that it's no longer based in fear, it's based in love, knowing that God has found us worthy. You know, the thing I love the most is thinking about as my daughter growing up, she is going to know her identity. I can't wait for her to read this verse. So when she reads it, she'll be able to say, God, I'm so thankful this is true. Ask and it will be given to you. I believe that because you have found me worthy, not by anything I've done, but because of who I am. I'm your child. You have adopted me, so I can own all of your blessings. So if I ask, if I seek, if I knock, you will be there, God. And I believe that. I'm not afraid of that going away or not being true. I'm not afraid of rejection or failure because I know who I am. No matter what happens, my daughter will know that. And I'm in this moment where I will just get to celebrate helping her see that. I will spend my whole life helping her see and understand her true identity in God. And the only reason I can actually do that is because I understand my true identity in God. I believe each and every one of us in here should want to understand and embrace the identity God has given you. We don't have to be slaves to fear. Because we are children of God, not only can we accept that, but we can help others accept that. Today, I ask you today, do you want to accept that? When you read verses like Luke, do you want to read it and be skeptical, thinking, boy, I wish that were true, or I just don't know, or I don't think I've done enough? Or do you want to read it and say, God, I'm so thankful. I know this is true because I am your son. I am your daughter. It will change the way we view God, the way we view ourselves, the way we view others. Our identity will change everything in our life. And it starts with understanding that we are worthy to take His possessions. Let me pray for you. God, I believe there are many people sitting in here today that, while they believe in you, their identity has been established and shaped by fear to where they're desperate to know that you actually care. They're desperate to know that you hear them, that somebody loves them and values them. They're afraid of being rejected, afraid of not being good enough. So Lord, I pray in this moment right now that you drive this into all of our hearts. We are adopted sons and daughters, worthy to possess all of your blessings, not by anything we've done, but because of who we are in your eyes. You have declared who we are. You've given us this identity, and there's nothing we can do to take that away. Lord, I pray that every single person in here doesn't just hear this and think that sounds great, but they start to take every thought captive, letting love drive out fear, to where whenever we hear anything, we read anything, we talk to anyone, our actions, reactions, everything, Lord, is founded in your love because we know who we are. Thank you. Thank you for giving us an identity, Lord. In your name we pray. Amen. I don't want anyone to leave just yet. Here in a moment, we're going to sing that song again. But I want us, before we get in that, to have this moment where we embrace our true identity. I don't just want us to think, okay, I'm a child of God. I want us to embrace it. Some of you in here have never embraced your true identity. Maybe this is the time. Some of you have let fear shape how you think, shape your identity. Some of you may be sitting in here not even sure if God is real. So I want to give you a moment to embrace your identity. Each one of you, either in the seat back in front of you or the seat you're sitting on, has a blue connection card. I want you to grab it right now. I'll wait. I want you to fill it out, and I want you to mark this moment. I want this moment to sink in, so that every time you hear this song, every time you hear the phrase child of God, your brain comes right back to this powerful moment where you know without a shadow of a doubt who you are in God's eyes. I want you to act on this. Take this card, mark this moment, and then before we leave, or as you're leaving, I want you to hand it in. I want you to act on this, embrace this. So as we finish in worshiping our God, I want us to embrace our identity together.
We just want to take a moment and respond to that truth, knowing that we are a child of God. And so whether you made that decision today for the first time to follow Jesus, or you've made that decision a long time ago, we just want to declare this together as a church. So if you would, let's sing this together.
I'm no longer a slave to fear. I am a child of God. I'm no longer a slave to fear. I am a child of God. Sing that again. I'm no longer a slave to fear. I am a child of God. I'm no longer a slave to fear. I am a child of God. So you split the sea. You split the sea so I could walk right through it. You drowned my fears in perfect love. You rescued me so I could stand and say, I am a child of God. You split the sea so I could walk right through it. My fears were drowned in perfect love. You rescued me so I could stand and say, I am a child of God. Let's sing that chorus out together one more time. Yeah, I'm no longer a slave to fear. I am a child of God. I'm no longer a slave to fear. I am a child